Child abuse is a devastating epidemic in the United States as well as across the world, and it needs to be recognized as such. According to the American Humane Association, there were 124,544 cases of physical abuse reported in 2012 in the United States. The American Humane Association defines physical abuse as the use of physical force such as hitting, kicking, shaking, burning, or other acts of physical aggression against a child that is intentional and perpetrated with malice. A disturbing fact is that child physical abuse accounts for 18% of total reported child maltreatment cases, with children between 4 and 11 years old accounting for 43.5% of all reported child abuse cases. There are countless children who are being neglected and mentally abused daily that will never get the help or the love and support that children need to grow and be successful in life. Abuse and neglect can have negative lifelong effects, some of which are depression, alcoholism, drug addiction, suicidal thoughts, as well as physical disabilities. It's imperative that this problem is given the amount of attention it deserves, because it is impossible to have a healthy generation when so many children are being abused by their own parents. Abuse comes in many different forms, typically broken down into 4 categories: emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and neglect. Each of these affect each child differently and may sometimes be overlooked as discipline. Something that may not seem like it could permanently affect someone may impair them for extended amounts of time. Up until doctors recognized battered child syndrome in the 1960s, people didn't realize the impacts child abuse can have on children. For example, a parent telling their child, "You can't do anything right," because the child had a bad day and failed a test, can cause the child to start withdrawing from the world and fall into a depression, or even become suicidal. This leads to social difficulties and many other problems. Children who have been abused are more prone to panic disorders, dissociative disorders, attention disorders, as well as anger and violence issues. Some people like to ignore what a major problem child abuse is and say it's just parents trying to make their kids better through discipline. Even though discipline is very necessary, there is still a line between discipline and abuse. When disciplining a child, the child should still feel loved and cared for and shouldn't have any lasting negative effects. A child failing a test or breaking a plate is not cause for them to be hit or kicked. Even though parents may tell their children after the fact that they're just trying to make them better, it is important to educate children so that they don't think it's okay to be abused. Emotional abuse comes in many forms, some that may be hard to spot. Some signs of emotional abuse that may stand out is if a parent consistently ignores, criticizes, or yells at a child or blames them for things that aren't their fault. These things may be hard to spot, which is why it's very important that people who work with children are well educated. People with a background of abuse and violence, or people who suffer from alcoholism, substance abuse, or mental illness are much more likely to abuse a child as well. Sexual abuse can cause an array of long-term problems, including emotional instability, physical wounds, depression, problems in schools, trust issues, and problems with future relationships. As many as 80% of young adults who had been abused met the diagnostic criteria for at least one psychiatric disorder at age 21. Sexual abuse can greatly contribute to mental illnesses. If a child reports sexual abuse, it's imperative that it's taken with the utmost seriousness and investigated with the devotion it deserves. Physical abuse is defined as when a parent or caregiver causes any non-accidental physical injury to a child. Child physical abuse shows associations with increased risk of physical, behavioral, cognitive, and psychological problems during childhood, and such effects can last into adulthood. Some signs that differentiate between discipline and love are if injuries are at different stages of healing or if they're on different surfaces of the body. It's very important to talk to children and their parents if you have any suspicion that abuse may be occurring. If a parent is abusing their child, they may refuse to explain the injury, or if the child says something they don't like, they may quickly change the subject. Caregivers who abuse their children also tend to avoid getting them medical care, which can just make the situation worse. Child neglect is another form of abuse. Although some of the signs and consequences may be the same as emotional abuse, it is very different. Neglect is defined as when a parent or caregiver does not give the care, supervision, affection, and support needed for a child's health, safety, and well-being. According to childhelp.org, one of the first keys to helping reduce child abuse in the United States is for people to be more educated about what abuse looks like and some of the non-physical signs. Teachers and other people that often are in contact with children must be educated about the symptoms, consequences, and proper ways to report child abuse. If they're not aware of the symptoms, this can lead to lifelong consequences for the children. The second key to reducing child abuse is for the population to be aware of the people that are most likely to commit abuse. If the government in America did a study, they would find many of the same things that Sweden did in a study where they found that people with a past of mental illness or alcoholism are much more likely to abuse their children. By researching the causes of child abuse and by educating the citizens, the rate of child abuse will go down.